بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. حضار نهایت گرامی، به نشست مشترک جلالت مآب محمد اشرف غنی رئیس جمهوری اسلامی افغانستان، آقای مارک اسپر وزیر دفاع ایالات متحده امریکا و آقای یانس استولتنبرگ سکرتر جنرال سازمان ناتو خوش آمدین. در آغاز به تلاوت آیات کلام الهی گوش فرا می دهیم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تهتدون والصلح خير إنما المؤمنون إخوة فأصلحوا بين أخويكم واتقوا الله لعلكم ترحمون صدق الله العظيم. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
I would like to call on Excellencies President Ghani, Secretary of Defense, and Secretary General to NATO to come to the podiums and say their remarks.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. تر هر څه اول درنو میلمنو د ناتو سازمان سرمنشی ښاغلی ستولتنبرګ، د امریکا د متحده ایالاتو دفاع وزیر ډاکټر اسپر، د افغانستان لپاره د اروپایي ټولنې خاص استازی ښاغلی رولند کوبیا او په کابل کې میشت د دوستو هیوادونو سفیرانو ته ښه راغلاست او ستړي مه شئ وایم. په خیر راغلی، هر کله راشئ. نن په کابل کې ستاسې محترم و دروند حضور د افغانستان له مشروع نظام څخه ستاسو د دوامداره ملاتړ ښودنه کوي. یو وار بیا له تاسو څخه مننه کوم. همدارنګه د افغانستان له سیاسي مشرانو، جهادي رهبرانو او په ملي شورا کې د خلکو له استازو او ټولو حاضرینو څخه مننه کوم چې نن په دغه پرتمینه غونډه کې حضور لري. ستاسو حضور د افغانستان د ملي وحدت او له نظام څخه د ملاتړ ښودنه کوي. له ټولو مننه کوم. وزیر محترم دفاع ایالات متحده امریکا و سرمنشی محترم سازمان ناتو، ما و شما به توافقات و معاهدات جدید ضرورت نداریم، به خاطر اینکه ما با سازمان ناتو و کشور دوست ایالات متحده امریکا معاهدات امنیتی داریم که در مشوره با نمایندگان مردم افغانستان در لوی جرگه مشورتی و توسط اعضای شورای ملی در هر دو مجلس به تصویب رسیده است. این معاهدات همچنان پابرجا می باشد. جنرال سکرتر سازمان ناتو جناب ستولتنبرگ، از شما تشکر می کنم که همیشه از همکاری‌های دوامدار با افغانستان حمایت کرده اید. به خصوص در کنفرانس اخیر وزرای دفاع سازمان ناتو برای حمایت، تمویل، تجهیز و تعلیم نیروهای امنیتی و دفاعی دلیر افغانستان تا سال 2024 میلادی گام‌های جدی برداشته اید. وزیر محترم دفاع ایالات امریکا دکتر اسپر، از شما تشکر میکنم که افغانستان را برای امنیت داخلی امریکا مهم دانسته اید و تأکید شما برای همکاری با افغانستان کوتاه مدت نه بلکه همیشه میان مدت و دراز مدت بوده است. درنو هیوادوالو او دلته ناستو خویندو او ورونو، نن د دوست هیواد امریکې متحده ایالاتو سره په افغانستان کې د دایمي سولې د تأمین په خاطره یوه ګډه اعلامیه خپروو چې د دغې اعلامیې د موادو په تطبیق سره به انشاءالله تعالی په افغانستان کې دایمي سوله او ثبات ته لاره هواره شي. په دغه اعلامیه کې یو ځل بیا ټینګار شوی دی چې د افغانستان اسلامی جمهوریت د ملګرو ملتونو سازمان د یو غړي په توګه او د نړیوالو قوانینو په اساس یو مستقل او خپلواک هیواد دی او د افغانستان اسلامی جمهوری دولت د امریکې د متحده ایالاتو او نړیوالې ټولنې لخوا په رسمیت پیژندل شوی دی. د افغانستان د اسلامی جمهوریت او د ناتو سازمان ترمنځ او دغه راز د امریکې متحده ایالاتو سره زموږ دوه اړخیزه امنیتي تړونونه پر ځای دي. په دې معنا چې د افغانستان ملي امنیتي او دفاعي ځواکونه سره زموږ د نړیوالو ملګرو تعهدات په خپل ځای پاتې دي او په امنیتي او دفاعي برخو کې به د دوی همکاري او حمایت دوام کوي. دلته لازمه بولم چې یادونه وکړم پرون زموږ د امنیتي او دفاعي ځواکونو ملي ورځ وه. یو ځل بیا ټولو زړورو افغان ملي وسلوالو ځواکونو ته د دغه ورځې مبارکي وړاندې کوم او د دوی د قربانیو او سرښندنو قدرداني کوم. افغان ولس د جنگ په ډګر کې ستاسې د قربانیو قدر کوي او پرون چې ستاسو ملي ورځ وه، ولس دا ورځ په ډېره شانداره توګه تجلیل کړه. په سوله کې ستاسو نقش او مسئولیت لا زیاتیږي، ځکه دا تاسې یاست چې د سولې ساتنه به کوئ، د طبیعي آفاتو پر وړاندې به زیانمنو سره مرسته کوئ او د افغانستان د پولو او ځمکنۍ بشپړتیا څخه به په کلکه دفاع کوئ. د دغې ګډې اعلامیې په اساس زموږ روابط د نړیوالې ټولنې خصوصا د امریکا متحده ایالات سره په متقابل احترام او د مشترکو ګټو په بنسټ ولاړ وي. په دغه مشترک اعلامیې کې د افغانستان د اوسنۍ 40 کلن ناورین او د جنگ او سوله-ایز حل په لارو چارو موافقه شوې ده. دا سوله-ایزه حل لاره به د افغانستان د اسلامی جمهوریت دولت او د طالبانو ترمنځ د مذاکراتو په نتیجه کې ترلاسه کیږي او بیا به موږ ټول په ګډه د هغه عملي کولو خواته ځو. زموږ مذاکراتي ټیم به د افغانستان د اسلامی جمهوریت تر چتر لاندې همه شموله وي. د امریکا او طالبانو ترمنځ د توافق په اساس تیره یوه اونۍ په افغانستان کې د تاوتریخوالي د کموالي اونۍ وه. سره له دې چې په دغه اونۍ کې ځینې پیښې وشوې، خو له نیکه مرغه اکثر وطنوالو یوه اونۍ په نسبتا سوله-ایزه فضا کې ژوند وکړ. دغه کار به د دې سبب شي چې طالبانو سره د مستقیمو مذاکراتو له لارې دایمي اوربند ته ورسیږو. د افغانستان دولت د امریکا د متحده ایالات او طالبانو ترمنځ د توافقنامې هغه برخه چې اورکم چې یو نوې اصطلاح ده او بالاخره دایمي اوربند ته اشاره شوې ده، همدارنګه د افغانستان د اسلامی جمهوریت او د طالبانو ترمنځ د مخامخ مذاکراتو د پیل په اړه کوم توافق شوی دی، له دې دواړو څخه هرکلی کوي. د موافقې ځینې برخې دي چې ضرورت ملاحظو ته لري او هغه په مستقیم مذاکراتو کې به طالبانو سره شریک سي. افغان ولس 2 کاله مخکې د اوربند او دا د اوسې د اورکم خوند ولیده. اوس ټول ولس دایمي اوربند او دایمي سولې ته سترګې په لار دي. موږ او تاسې او طالبان باید د ولس دا پاکه او سپېڅلې هیله او غوښتنه پوره کړو. اینجا میخوایم با وضاحت کامل بگویم که تمام مواد توافقنامه ایالات امریکا و طالبان مشروط می باشد. مواد این موافقتنامه زمان قابل تطبیق است تا طالبان همه تعهدات مندرج در آن را عملی سازد. مثلا یکی از شرایط تعداد و موجودیت نیروهای خارجی در افغانستان است که بستگی به این دارد تا دیده شود که طرف مقابل به تعهداتشان چقدر پابند میماند. برای معلومات شما باید بگویم که پیشنهاد کاهش نیروهای خارجی را در افغانستان اولین بار من مطرح کردم، به خاطری که 94% عملیات ها را نیروهای امنیتی و دفاعی افغان پلان و به شکل مستقلانه عملی میکنند که این خود ارتقا و بالا رفتن ظرفیت نیروهای امنیتی و دفاعی ما را نشان میدهد. من به نمایندگی از دولت جمهوری اسلامی افغانستان سال گذشته برای رئیس جمهور محترم ایالات امریکا آقای ترامپ نامه فرستادم و در آن مطرح کردم که با در نظر داشت بالا رفتن ظرفیت نیروهای امنیتی و دفاعی کشور، حکومت افغانستان آمادگی به خاطر کاهش تدریجی نیروهای ایالات متحده امریکا را دارد که این روند طبعا کمک میکند تا هزینه‌های مالی ایالات متحده امریکا در افغانستان کاهش پیدا کند. من یک بار دیگر به نمایندگی از مردم افغانستان، از کشورهای عضو سازمان ناتو و دولت و مردم امریکا بر خاطر حمایت‌های مالی و نظامیشان تشکر میکنم. حالا به اجازه شما میخواهم برای دوستان خارجی چند حرف به زبان انگلیسی بگویم. Secretary Esper, Secretary General Stoltenberg, distinguished guests. The tragedy of 9/11 brought us together. Mutual sacrifice created human bonds between us. Mutual interest, your security and our freedom, sustains our relationship, and mutual respect has made us partners. The BSA and the SOFA give legal expression to our transparent relationship. NATO and US partners have spared neither blood nor treasure for attaining the goals of the partnership. We ask you to thank the veterans, especially the Gold Star families, for their selfless service. Our sacrifice has been immense, both in the martyrdom of the NDSF and our civilians. Children, youth in their prime, and men and women in all ages, in walks of life, whose lives were taken away by senseless acts of violence and terror in public spaces. May I ask you for a moment of silence in honor of our mutual fallen heroes. Today can be the moment of overcoming the past. Our people can mark it as the time when our quest for sustainable and dignified peace moved from desirability to feasibility and credibility, both for the living generations and the future generations to come. We, the people and the government of Afghanistan, and you, our international partners, are in full agreement and alignment on the need for seeking a political solution to the conflict with the Taliban. We have the political will and the capacity to make peace because of the resilience of our society, the dynamism of our economy, and the capability of our state. An indication of our resilience as a society is the return of over 10 million of our displaced population and refugees during the last 19 years. Around 4 million of them returning during the last 5 years alone. Free speech, expressed both through a vibrant media and social media, are features of our daily lives, and hold pride in it and make sure that it's protected. Our egalitarian ethos finds expression in national dialogue, with the tradition of Loa Jirga adapted as a mechanism of national discussion and consensus building. Our demographic profile, with 75% under 30, makes the country one of the young people. Our women, creative, dynamic, and strong, think and speak for themselves. We've become a true stakeholder society, discussing peace vigorously. Our inclusive, productive public discussion has turned the interrelated notions of constitution, republic, citizenship, and freedoms and rights into keywords in our social discourse and narrative of our collective identity as Afghans today. During the historic 2018 ceasefire, our society demonstrated the capacity for embracing the future, engaging tens of thousands of Taliban fighters in conversation, without a single incident of abuse, revenge, or violence. Our societal capacity for peace, tolerance, and forgiveness comes from our abiding belief in the injections of Islam. Our ulama have been champions of peace and our rights and freedoms. The alignment of views between the ulama and the women in the dialogue with Taliban has been truly inspiring. Our ulama created the enabling conditions for the 2018 ceasefire when 2,907 of them issued a fatwa urging peace and ceasefire. I therefore quickly ordered a ceasefire. The Taliban accepted. Thereby, we had a true feast celebrating the end of the month of Ramadan in 2018. Our private sector is engaged vigorously in peace. Today, they provide the necessary goods to every single district of Afghanistan. In 1990, people had to stand in line for hours to get a liter of petrol or some wheat or flour. We have demonstrated our political will in state capacity. The past 2 months, we embarked on intense process of consultation with our defense forces, civilian leadership, and critical groups of stakeholders, responding to the directions from their commander-in-chief. Our patriotic forces changed their posture from war to reduction of violence within 5 days. We have organized our civilian capacity in all provinces equally swiftly. Relentless focus on reforms and a culture of acceptance of civilian leadership has been the key to building the capacity of the security sector. Defying predictions that the NDSF will not be able to fill the vacuum left by the departure of over 125,000 ISAF forces in full assumption of security by ourselves, we've gone from strength to strength, and thank you for the resolute support mission, and I salute General Miller and the previous commanders. NDSF's strength, functioning as the protector of our constitutional order and protector of the rights and obligations of their fellow citizens, gives us the confidence to pursue sustainable peace. Your ongoing support to the NDSF, Dr. Esper, Mr. Stoltenberg, during peace and war are essential to our freedom and your security. Our brave women are increasingly serving along the men in the NDSF. Peace has been an integral component of our vision and program of action for securing the future of our country as an effective state, unified nation, and prosperous country. End of 40 years of violence is the primary objective of our society. Peace is the process for achieving this objective, a process that would not lead to the stated objective and merely change the scale and scope of violence is therefore not likely to receive strong public support. Given the stated divergence between the Taliban and us, we need to agree to a fair and transparent process for reaching agreement and convergence. We are confident that we have a national consensus on peace. Our confidence derives from 5 years of intense consultation. The ulama, women and youth have convened national level gatherings of stakeholders giving expression to their hopes and fears. The consultative peace Loyjirga of 2019 brought all the stakeholders into a national forum. The 23 recommendations of the Loyjirga have provided a platform for peace. Reaching here is required commitment and sacrifice of the NDSF, compassion for the suffering of every Afghan, conviction that the war must end politically, and courage to act on the conviction to opt for the road less traveled when reaching a fork in the road. A president, however, does not have the freedom of a citizen. A president has to act within the limits set by the Constitution, the source of his authority, hence assessing all recommendations through compliance with the Constitution, our national rule book. We need to acknowledge that we have yet to form a national consensus on the price of peace and the trade-offs. In the course of negotiation, the trade-offs and the price will become clear. The nation will then have to make a decision through the parliament, a Loyjirga, or a referendum. Every Afghan citizen is a stakeholder in the peace process. To ensure inclusiveness, we will engage in an intensive round of consultation in the next 7 days on how to balance effectiveness, inclusion, authority, and capabilities. I would like to thank President Trump for his stewardship of the South Asia strategy and for engaging with us for reframing the agreement between the US and the Taliban. The current framework responds to the desire of our people for putting reduction of violence and ceasefire front and center. And I'd like to thank you, Secretary Esper, personally. The strong emphasis on a conditions-based approach is also welcome. We appreciate the willingness of the United States and our NATO partner to discuss the question of sanctuary provided by Pakistan to the Taliban as an armed group. Our agenda for discussion with the Taliban will be wider than their discussions with the United States. They should be ready to discuss their relationship with the state and non-state sponsors, a verifiable system for cutting off their ties with all transnational terrorist groups, their dependence and involvement with narcotics and other transnational criminal organizations positively. We have an exciting agenda for putting an end to 40 years of violence and joining forces to build an Afghanistan that every Afghan can be proud of and ensure the return of our refugees from Iran and Pakistan. Ending of violence will require regional cooperation and support. Our goal is to become a platform for regional and global cooperation. We thank all our neighbors near and far and call on Eurasia powers, especially China, Iran, Pakistan, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, and our Central Asian neighbors, to join us in the noble quest for peace and cooperation. I thank the European Union for thinking with us both the peace process and the immense work that will be required to implement and realize peace. I'd like to thank Germany and Norway for their offers. Let me conclude by thanking you for honoring us with your presence. I count on your support to help us create an even broader set of partnership for peace than those created for responding to the tragedy of 9/11. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
President Ghani, Chief Executive Abdullah, Secretary General Stoltenberg, Minister Khalid, distinguished guests, we join here today with real hope for the future of Afghanistan. Since the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001, the international community and government of Afghanistan have united together in the fight against threats to international peace and security. Along with our NATO allies and partners, we have committed to ensuring that Afghanistan never again becomes a safe haven for terrorists to threaten our homelands. Throughout this long war, we work closely with the government of Afghanistan to strengthen its security forces and develop the democratic institutions to chart a safe, secure, and prosperous future for this proud country. America and its allies have made tremendous sacrifices in pursuit of these goals, as have the people of Afghanistan. We honor our brave service members who have served here, especially those who paid the ultimate sacrifice alongside our Afghan security force partners. And we remember, as well, the innocent civilians lost in this struggle. The ongoing efforts to achieve a political settlement after many long years of fighting reflect a shared desire for a sovereign, unified Afghanistan at peace with itself and its neighbors. Thanks to President Trump's leadership, we are finally making substantial progress toward ending our nation's longest war. Today's release of the joint declaration between the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan and the United States marks a pivotal moment in the peace process. Our declaration acknowledges the deep bond shared by Afghan and U.S. forces and reflects our commitment to working together to achieve a sustainable, negotiated agreement that ends the war for the benefit of all Afghans. Central to this agreement are measures to prevent the use of Afghan soil by terrorist groups or other individuals who seek to harm the United States or our allies. Over the past week, we have observed a significant reduction in violence, which has created the necessary conditions for the United States to approve an agreement with the Taliban. This agreement, which will be signed in Doha shortly after this ceremony, paves the way for intra-Afghan negotiations to proceed so that a permanent and comprehensive ceasefire may be achieved. Afghanistan deserves a chance to enjoy the security and prosperity that comes from peace and stability. This will only happen if Afghans join together with one another to embrace this opportunity. We call on the Taliban to abide by their commitments as outlined in the agreement with the United States, to include maintaining the ongoing reduction in violence across the country. And as intra-Afghan negotiations progress, the United States will watch the Taliban's actions closely to judge whether their efforts towards peace are in good faith. If the Taliban uphold the agreement, the United States will begin a conditions-based, and I repeat, conditions-based reduction in forces. Concurrently, we will work with other members of the coalition to carry out a proportional reduction in troop levels. However, should the Taliban fail to honor their commitments, they will forfeit their chance to sit with fellow Afghans and deliberate on the future of their country. Moreover, the United States would not hesitate to nullify the agreement. Meanwhile, the United States and our international partners remain committed to our long-standing security relationship with the government of Afghanistan. For several years now, the Afghan security forces have been in the lead for providing security, and their effectiveness continues to grow. We will continue to provide them support as necessary to assist in their defense against internal and external threats to the sovereignty of Afghanistan. This is a hopeful moment, but it is only the beginning. The road ahead will not be easy. Achieving lasting peace in Afghanistan will require patience and compromise among all parties. But for the first time in many years, Afghanistan has a real path toward the future this country deserves. We look forward to the coming weeks and months with great optimism as we advance these important efforts to finally achieve peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellency Secretary General, please.
President Ghani, Chief Executive Abdullah, Secretary Esper, distinguished guests. I'm honored to join you all here in Kabul today to mark the start of this new chapter for Afghanistan. In a statement that we have just released, all NATO allies welcome this step towards peace. The agreement between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan and between the United States and Taliban promise to end decades of devastating conflict and to pave the way for negotiations among Afghans as they begin to build a better future for all. This is a victory for peace and a victory for the Afghan people. Through their bravery and determination and the support of the international community, Afghanistan is a very different country today than it was in 2001. It is no longer a safe haven for international terrorists. Terrorists who conducted the attacks against the United States and threatened people across the globe. The security we have helped the Afghan forces to build has underpinned political, economic, and social progress. Child mortality has dropped dramatically. Life expectancy has increased significantly. And millions more Afghans are in school, including girls. Today, we see women's participation at all levels and freedom of the press being expressed every day. 20 years ago, all of this would have been unthinkable. I have seen this transformation from despair to hope, driven by a deep desire for peace, in the eyes of every Afghan I have met. From political and military leaders to journalists and artists, and from special operation forces to female fighter pilots. The challenge now is to preserve these gains. The price of peace cannot be to sacrifice progress. Peace will only be sustainable if the human rights of all Afghans, women, men, and children, are protected. NATO allies and partners will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Afghanistan, as we have done since 2001. Over the years, under the NATO flag, hundreds of thousands of troops from North America, Europe, and countries around the world have been deployed to Afghanistan. Thousands of troops from NATO allies and partners remain in Afghanistan today to continue to train, advise, and assist Afghan security forces and Afghan institutions. Over the years, we have provided critical funding to support the Afghan security forces, and we will continue this funding. Thanks to our training and financial backing, the Afghan security forces have become stronger and more professional. And we will continue to support them as they build a safer and more secure Afghanistan. To support this process and to support the peace process, NATO will reduce its presence in Afghanistan step by step and conditions-based, reflecting the progress we see on the ground. NATO allies and partners went into Afghanistan together. We will adjust our presence together, and when the time is right, we will leave together. This will only happen when we are sure that the Afghan forces no longer require our support, and that Afghanistan will never again become a platform for international terrorists. The path to peace is long and hard, and there may be setbacks. We have already paid a high price. So I pay tribute to those who have served so bravely and sacrificed so much, in particular the Afghan security forces and the people of Afghanistan, whose strength and determination have laid the foundations for peace. And I say to the Afghan people, the international community stands with you. NATO stands with you. Now is not the time to waver or to jeopardize the progress made. The time for peace is now. So I urge all Afghans to seize this historic moment to build a truly inclusive Afghanistan and to unite in the pursuit of lasting peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellencies, we have 4 questions today, 2 from Afghan media and 2 from the international media who's traveled with the Secretary of Defense. Can I call on Thomas Geppinson from New York Times to pose his question? Thank you.
Thank you. President Ghani, could you clarify whether the negotiating team of the Taliban will include political parties and civil society or just government officials, as your spokesman said a couple days ago? And Dr. Esper, following the agreement, what is the threshold for the U.S. to strike back at the Taliban if they continue to attack Afghan national security forces?
No, please go ahead.
With regard to any attacks on Afghan national security forces, we always reserve the right to self-defense and the right to protect our Afghan partners. We have to look at each on a case-by-case basis. I will rely heavily on the commander we have, the superb commander, General Miller, with regard to how we will act. And again, we will not take anything off the table. Our commitment is to this agreement and to the terms by which we agreed to implement it, and we are prepared to use force as necessary, but our hope is that all parties will abide by their obligations and commitments under this agreement.
Peace belongs to all Afghans. The team will represent the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan and will be inclusive of civil society, parties, and all walks of life will
از همه
have a
بخش‌های
balance
جامعه
between
یک
generations.
توازن بین نسل‌ها را البته همچنین در این ما خواهیم در نظر گرفت. ادریس علی از رایترز.
Mr. President, so far your
جناب
government
رئیس
has
جمهور،
largely been
دولت شما
left aside from the talks that are taking place
از
in
این
Doha.
گفتگوها که در دوحه صورت
And there's a
می‌گرفت شامل
perception that the
نبودند.
United States
و همین که
abandoned Afghanistan a
آمریکا
couple of decades ago when the
یک
Soviets left. What makes you confident that the United States will not abandon you at this
یعنی
time?
چی چیز شما را اطمینان بدهد که آمریکا افغانستان را ترک نخواهد کرد؟
There's
و
obviously a
جناب
very
وزیر
fragile political situation in
وضعیت
the
سیاسی
country.
بسیار شکننده هست در
President
کشور.
Ghani is,
جناب رئیس
said
جمهور
he
غنی
won the election,
گفتن که اونا
chief
انتخابات را
executive
بردن.
of the
رئیس
legislative
جناب رئیس
behind him said
جمهور
he
میگن
won
که
the
پشت سرش
election.
هستن میگن که اونا انتخابات را بردن. پس
afraid that the tense
شما
political
ترس دارید
situation
که
may
همچو
sort of scurry
شرایط
and destroy the
سیاسی
deal that's been worked out.
که
My rule
مشکلات
of thumb
داره
is to stay
چه
out of
خواهد بود؟
politics in the
البته
United
من
States, so I'm
از
gonna stay out
سیاست
of
دور
politics in
هستم. در
Afghanistan.
آمریکا هم از سیاست دور هستم. در اینجا هم از سیاست
Well,
خود دور
first of
نگاه
all, may I
میکنم.
make a correction?
و من یک چیز تصحیح بکنم.
We've been in intense
ما
discussions with the United
بحث‌هایی با
States.
آمریکا
President Trump
داشتیم.
honored us personally by visiting Bagram.
با جناب رئیس
Secretary
جمهور
Esper and all
شخصا
leading,
بگرام آمدن و همچنان
members,
وزیر صاحب آقای اسپر و همکاران
of the US
بخش
government
رهبری
have engaged us.
آمریکا
Secretary Pompeo has repeatedly
وزیر صاحب
engaged us.
پامپی
To
چندین
say
بار هم
that
را با
we
ما
have
تماس
been
بودن. از اینکه اگر گفته
marginalized,
شد که
I
ما با
think it's
حاشیه
totally
کشانیده شده هستیم، من فکر می‌کنم که کاملا
Uh,
غیر عادلانه هست. و
as I
دوم
stated
همانطور که
in my
به خدمت
written
گفتم در سخنانی که من پیشتر ارائه
As a
کردم،
result of the
در
engagement,
نتیجه
after President Trump made his famous
صحبت‌ها بعد از اینکه مثلا
conditions
رئیس
have changed
جمهور
very considerably.
ترامپ توییت مشهور خود کرد، شرایط کاملا
The
تغییر کرد.
focus putting
پس تمرکز
reduction of
ای که
violence
کاهش در
front and
خشونت اول در مرکزیت قرار
to
داشته باشه،
ceasefire,
بالاخره ما رو به طرف
reflection of
آتش
the
بس
views
برسه،
of our
انعکاس
people,
دهنده نظریات مردم افغانستان
condition
بوده.
based approach.
روش مبتنی بر شرایط.
We are fully
ما
aligned.
کاملا در
We welcome
مطابقت
this
هستیم.
opportunity.
ما از این فرصت استقبال میکنیم
And
و
our engagement is based on
مشارکتمان
mutual respect,
بر اساس احترام
mutual
مشترک
And
و
it
منافع
will
مشترک هست
continue to
و
do so.
این ادامه خواهد یافت به همین
Mr.
شکل.
Moman
تشکر.
from RTA.
جناب مومن صاحب از تلویزیون ملی افغانستان.
Thank you. I'm from
تشکر.
the
من
National Radio Television
از
of
تلویزیون ملی
Afghanistan. My
افغانستان
question
هستم.
is
سوال
addressed
من
to the Secretary of Defense
از وزیر
and
صاحب
to the General
دفاع
Secretary of
و از
NATO.
سکرتر جنرال ناتو هست.
The people of
مردم
Afghanistan
افغانستان
are cautiously optimistic about the
خوشبین
peace
هستند با
process
احتیاط راجع به
because
پروسه صلح،
there are concerns
با خاطر که
about the
نگرانی های
implications
همچنین
of
وجود دارد
US troops
به
withdrawals
ارتباط به
and
این
other
که
international
اساکر
forces
آمریکا و
withdrawal
سایر
from
اساکر بین المللی وقتی که از
There is a
افغانستان
real
برآیند،
concern
یک
among
نگرانی
the people
واقعی بین
that
مردم وجود دارد
Afghanistan
که
might God forbid
نشود
return to the
افغانستان خدا
era of
نخواسته
90s,
پس
to
به
the
زمان
civil war.
90 و جنگ های
So
داخلی
how
برگردد.
can you assure the
پس شما
people of
چطور میتونید که به
Afghanistan
مردم افغانستان
that
اطمینان خاطر
such a
بدهید
situation
که همچون
will
یک
not
وضعیت
happen again, that
بر
history will not
نمیگردد و
repeat
این که
itself?
تاریخ خود را تکرار نخواهد
Well,
کرد.
I will say first of all that
ما
we are
میخوایم
fully
بگویم که
committed to
ما کاملا
supporting
متعهد
the
هستیم
Afghan
که
national defense and
قوای
security
دفاعی
forces
امنیتی
throughout
افغانستان
this
را حمایت
process
بکنیم در
as
سر
far
تا
as
سر
it
این
takes
پروسه
and as long as
تا
it
هر
takes.
قدر وقتی که میگیره
We
و تا
reserve
هر
all
جایی
the
که
rights of
میگیرد ما
self-defense.
حق
We will retain
دفاع
all the
خودی را
necessary
داریم.
capabilities.
ما همه توانایی های
At the
خود
end
را
of the
حفظ
day,
خواهیم
this will
نمود،
be
البته
a
نگاه خواهیم کرد و در
conditions-based
ختم روز بالاخره این پروسه
Again, a
مبتنی بر شرایط
conditions-based
هست.
process.
باز هم
The
پروسه
standard for
مبتنی
me,
بر شرایط هست.
the United
معیار برای
States
ما
will
ایالات
be
متحده آمریکا
that Afghanistan
این هست
again
که
never becomes a
افغانستان
threat, a
باز
safe
دیگر
haven for terrorists
تهدید
to threaten
نباشد.
America,
تهدید
homelands of our
یعنی یک
partners.
پناهگاه امنی تو روزهای
And
بین
that
المللی
means
و که
retaining
تهدید باز بالاخره به آمریکا و دیگر
capabilities
کشورها
throughout this
شود
process,
نشود و همین است که در
to do
بالاخره
just
همین
that.
پروسه کار همین است که این
In
ما
the
دنبال بکنیم.
statement that
در
29
سخنانی که در
allies
حقیقت
agreed today, they reiterate
متحدین
their
ناتو
commitment
موافقه
to
کردند.
Afghanistan, their
اونا
commitment to provide
اونا
support, to
حمایت
provide
خود را به
training,
افغانستان
advice and assistance,
تاکید
and to
کردند.
continue to
تعهد دارند به
provide,
افغانستان که
financial
آموزش های
support.
لازمی را
So
با حمایت
NATO
ملی را ارائه بکنند.
allies
پس
and
ناتو و
partners
متحدین ناتو و
are
همکارانشان
committed to Afghanistan.
متعهد به افغانستان
And we
هستند
have demonstrated
و ما
that
در
through
حقیقت
18
امیر
years of presence.
در
And
حضور
we have
18
to
ساله
remember
خود
that
نشان
we are in
دادیم
Afghanistan
و ما
to
میخوایم
help
بگیم
the
که ما در
Afghans.
افغانستان
But
به
we
خاطر
also
همین هستیم که
not
افغانها را
only
کمک
Afghanistan.
بکنیم ولی افغانها
We are
خود هم
in
همچنان خود
Afghanistan
کمک
because
بکنن.
it's in our
این است که
security
در
interest
یعنی
to
بله
provide- to
این
prevent
در به خاطر
Afghanistan
امنیت خود ما
from once
هست
again
که
becoming
نگذاریم
a
که
safe
افغانستان
haven
باز هم
for
یک پناهگاه هم به خاطر
That's the
تروریست های
reason
بین المللی
why we're
شود.
committed, and that's the reason why
این
any
خاطر هست که ما
withdrawal,
تعهد
any
داریم.
reduction of
پس هر
force
کاهش
levels
در
will be
قوای
conditions-based.
ما
We have
مبتنی
just
بر
to
شرایط شرایط هست. ما قبلا هم گفتیم یک چند سال قبل مثلا ما 130,000 اساکر داشتیم که در جنگ‌های محاربوی بودن و حالا 16,000 اساکر ما در ماموریت ناتو داریم. نشان میدهد که چقدر قوای دفاعی امنیتی افغانستان قوی شده هستند به خاطر که خودشان عملیات ها را رهبری میکنند و فعالیت ها را رهبری میکنند. سوال آخر از آقای نگزاد، تلویزیون طلوع.
من خالد نیکزاد هستم از تولو نیوز.
I'm Khalid Negzad from Tolo News. My question is, the government of Afghanistan, United States of America, and North said that other than Taliban, there are other terrorist groups in Afghanistan who are active and they are considered as a threat. So after agreement is made with Taliban, how about fighting against the other terrorist groups? How will that be? Taliban, USA, and government of Afghanistan will get together to fight against those terrorist groups, or how?
Yes, that's a very important point
بله
and deserves clarification. We will continue our operations against terrorist groups such as ISIS-K.
ما در مقابل داعش و دیگران فعالیت‌های خود را نخواهیم داد که در مقابل آمریکا و دیگران و در مقابل افغان‌ها تهدید نباشه، در مقابل مردم افغانستان تهدید نباشه. دغه به عمل لري.
Thank you very much.
ډیر شکر ډیر مننه. زموږ خبرې دغه ته پای ته ورسېدلې.